Hey, we're going to go over the kettlebell clean today. There are two types of kettlebell cleans. There's the dead clean. The dead clean starts and finishes at the floor for every rep. The regular kettlebell clean is the second movement, and that starts and finishes in the hang position or the kettlebell swing position. We're going to go over this from the top down. We'll start with the rack position, one of the most difficult parts of this movement. Then we'll talk about the return, we'll talk about the setup, and finally, we'll talk about the transition. The rack position for the kettlebell clean looks like this. Start your athletes without a kettlebell to get them in the proper position. What we want to do is we want to tell them to keep their upper arm attached to the side of their body or attached to their ribs. And then we want to put that thumb right in the middle of the chest. This position here is going to vary from person to person depending upon anatomy. Men can either go from the middle of the chest to the end of the collarbone. And for ladies, it might be from the end of the collarbone towards the bra strap, but we don't want to go outside of that because we want to keep the kettlebell over the hip, knee, and ankle. So from this position, we also want to make sure that the wrist is straight and that our grip is open. After we get our athletes in this rack position, we'll go ahead and tell them to get a kettlebell, lift it with two hands, and put the kettlebell in the rack position. Just like this. Notice the wrist is straight, the hand is open. The kettlebell has 3 points of contact. I've got my forearm, my bicep, and my shoulder, and the kettlebell is directly over the hip, knee, and ankle. Okay, let's talk about some faults with the rack position. I'm going to do this initially without the kettlebell in hand. The first one is a bent wrist. We'll get this action here. And all we need to do is, a lot of times, you just need to tell the athlete to open their hand. They have a closed grip and it will naturally roll. But what I like to do is tell them to just point to their shoulder. And right there, we'll straighten that out. The other thing we see is a vertical forearm. We see this out here, holding the kettlebell. Thumb is around the armpit crease or outside of it. And what this does is it ends up putting the kettlebell outside of the hip, knee, and ankle. And it's putting a lot of pressure on the elbow and the shoulder. And we just want to tell them from this position to bring that thumb back to the middle of the chest. The next fault that we might see is a detached upper arm. We'll see this in a couple of different ways. We've got the chicken wing where we have the elbow out here, and we just want to tell the athlete to pin that elbow to the ribs or flex your lats and drop your arm, something like that. The next thing we'll see is an elbow up high, and that's because people are used to having high elbows in a rack position, right? So you say rack position, they automatically want to go here. And again, we'll just tell them, drop that elbow down, get the thumb to the center of the chest, and they're connected. They have 3 points of contact, wrist is straight, and they're right back where we need them to be. Next, we have to teach the athlete how to return the kettlebell either to the ground or to the swing position. We've already established the rack position, now we got to get it back down. What we're going to do is we're going to tell the athlete to either roll the kettlebell or unwind the kettlebell from the rack position. The upper arm and elbow are going to stay attached to the body as long as possible. Once the kettlebell passes the waist, that's when the arm breaks from the body and you can go all the way to the ground or into the swing position. I'll go ahead and demo a couple of reps so that you can see what that looks like. From the rack position to the ground. From the rack position to the swing. The other thing to note is what I call the counter lever, and that is as you're unwinding or rolling the kettlebell away from the body, you want to slightly pitch your weight backwards or throw your torso slightly away from the kettlebell. This is going to give you balance and act as a counter lever until you get to that swing or back to the ground. All right, next we're going to talk about the setup. The setup is the same as a barbell clean. Our feet are underneath our hips, toes pointing forward. Our back is going to be straight, lats engaged, and shoulders set, pulling the knees back behind the toes. We want to set the kettlebell so that the handle is parallel to our hips and it is over the big knuckle on our big toe. As we go down to grab the kettlebell handle, if we're grabbing with our right hand, we want to grab the far side or the left side of the handle. And then if we're grabbing with the left, we want to grab the right side of the handle or the far side of the handle. So your setup is going to look like this. Ready to go. Okay guys, the final piece of the puzzle is the transition. So as we get set up here, just like that clean setup, we're going to reach down and grab the handle. And then that first pull is a deadlift pull. So we're just going to pull up. Once we get past the knees, that's where we're going to vertically extend our hips. Our shoulders naturally going to follow with a shrug and the elbows slightly to the outside. As the kettlebell moves up, we quickly drop the elbow, attach it to the side, and we allow the kettlebell to roll around the arm and land into the pocket. We also allow our body to absorb the kettlebell, just like you were getting punched, rather than try and meet the kettlebell. Okay? So it's going to look like this. That is the dead clean. If we were doing a regular kettlebell clean, the setup is the same, except we're not going to come from the ground. We're going to stand, and as we stand, that kettlebell is naturally going to go back into a kettlebell swing. Then we will extend the hips and bring the kettlebell up to the rack position. And it'll look like this. And that is the transition.